Hi everyone, Chef Sarah here with the Sylvia Center. We're a nonprofit specializing in providing food and nutrition education in New York City and Columbia County. Today is day one of our Pancake Passport series. So this will be 6 weeks where I talk about pancakes from all over the world. The first lesson is Introduction to Pancakes, where we're going to talk about 2 different types of American style pancakes. The first one that I'm going to make today is an oatmeal blueberry pancake. So I have all my ingredients in front of me, as you can see, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those before we dive in. So our first ingredient is oats. Today I'm using old-fashioned oats, which also sometimes are called rolled oats. With this, you can also use quick oats if you prefer. With the old-fashioned, they're a little bit thicker, if you can see there. And the quick oats are going to be a little bit thinner and they're going to cook a lot quicker. But I usually like to use the old-fashioned oats because I do like to really get those nice pieces of oats. So it's really up to you, and you can use whichever you might have around. Our next ingredient is we have some milk. You can use whatever kind of milk you have. Today I'm using low-fat milk. And then in my bowl here I have 2 types of flour. I have all-purpose flour and I have whole wheat flour. By using some whole wheat flour, it's really going to add so many more nutrients into our pancakes. If at all possible, I recommend using a mix of the 2. If you only have one or the other, you could definitely use that, but these will come out really, really nice using that mix. Today we're also going to use baking powder and baking soda. These are really important because today we want really beautiful, fluffy pancakes. We don't want flat pancakes. To get these nice and fluffy, we do need to use a leavener. So baking powder and baking soda are the leaveners that we're using. So this has a chemical in it that's going to react once liquid hits those pancakes and once the heat hits the pancakes, and that's what's going to make them nice and puffy. On our last week of our Pancake Passport series, we are going to make crepes, and crepes are super, super, super thin and very flat, and those will not use any leaveners. But today we do want to add that fluffiness, so we are using both baking powder and baking soda. We're also going to use a tiny bit of sugar and salt. We don't need much of either one of these. The other ingredients that we add are going to add a lot of sweetness, and we like to use our toppings as our sweetness also. So we really just need just a little bit of sugar, and as always, a pinch of salt. A pinch of salt's really just going to elevate everything and make it even more fantastic. I also have 2 eggs, so we're going to use 2 eggs today, and I have buttermilk. For me, I always use buttermilk to make pancakes. It's going to add so much flavor. It's going to add a really great tanginess, and it's also going to help with the texture. I have some vanilla extract. Vanilla is very strong on its own. I'm actually going to smell it. I love the way it smells. It smells so nice. I love it. So the vanilla is going to add a lot of really great flavor. And it's not going to be the main flavor. We're not going to taste these, and they're not going to taste like vanilla pancakes, but it's just going to really help enhance all the other flavors. The next ingredient, we're going to use a little bit of oil. We're going to use about 3 tablespoons of this. So you could use canola oil, vegetable oil, whatever you have around. I would skip olive oil. Olive oil is going to have a pretty strong taste that I know I don't really want in my pancakes. If you do, great, go for it. But today we're going to use, I have vegetable, but you could also use canola or whatever you might have. Okay, for our main star, the main ingredient, the star of the show, here I have some fresh blueberries. I'm going to eat one of these because I love blueberries. Right now is blueberry season. So these are going to be so fantastic because they are nice and fresh. These blueberries are from New Jersey, so they're pretty close by, which is fantastic as well. If it is January and you are making these pancakes, I would recommend using frozen blueberries. Frozen fruit is usually picked at the peak of its most amazing flavor and the peak of its season. So if blueberries are not in season, I would recommend using frozen. And they're usually a little bit less expensive also. So it's a really nice way to get really flavorful berries in your pancakes, and also to not spend too much money. Because usually also if fruit is out of season, it's also usually a little bit more expensive. So we're lucky today, and we do have some nice fresh seasonal blueberries, but you could definitely use frozen. Okay, so I'm gonna wash my hands and we're gonna get started making some pancakes. Okay, so now that my hands are washed, and I'm gonna talk about some of the utensils that I have in front of me. The first thing I have here is today I'm gonna use a grill pan for my pancakes. I like to use this when I'm making pancakes for a crowd because I can make a lot at once. Normally, if I'm making a smaller batch, I'll just use a saute pan like this. When using this, you might just need to make a few rounds of pancakes. Okay, the other utensils I have a whisk, I have a spatula, I have some measuring cups, and measuring spoons. So this is pretty easy. This is all I need today. I'm going to set those aside for right now. Okay, and in my bowl, we're going to get started. In the bowl here, I do have whole wheat flour and all-purpose flour. I do have a mixture of half and half. So I have 3/4 a cup whole wheat flour and 3/4 a cup of all-purpose flour. Something else I want to do before we get started is I am going to soak these oats a little bit. It's not a necessary step. If you want to skip it, you could, but it's just going to really soften these. So it'll really put a nice flavor and texture into the pancakes. So I'm just going to add a little bit of hot water over top of these to soak these. Okay, so now that I have water soaking on those, they're just going to get a little bit softer to get ready for our pancakes. We will drain that water out once they're ready to go in. Okay, so now that I have my flours here, I'm going to add the rest of my dry ingredients into this bowl. So I'm going to start with my baking powder. I'm going to do 2 teaspoons. One of my favorite things is there's this little piece on the side there that you can just scrape your spoon to get a really nice level scoop. Okay, so 2 teaspoons of baking powder and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Add a pinch of salt and 2 tablespoons of sugar. Okay, now that all my dry ingredients are in there, I am going to whisk this together. The reason I want to make sure it's nice and mixed is because once we add the wet ingredients, we're going to try to mix as little as possible. So what we want to make sure is that we don't have baking powder in one bite, baking soda in another, and salt. So we just want to make sure that's nice and incorporated. Okay, so now that I have my dry ingredients, I'm going to set that aside. And I'm going to get my wet ingredients ready here. So in here, I have my buttermilk. And I'm going to crack 2 eggs. I always like to crack eggs into a different container. The reason for this is because I don't like eggshells in my pancakes. So this way we'll be assured that there will be no eggshells because we can look in that little container there. Okay. So now we're good. So I'm going to add my eggs to my buttermilk. I'm going to wash my hands because anytime we crack eggs, we want to make sure we wash our hands. Okay, my hands are washed. So in here I have my buttermilk, I have my eggs, and I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla. So I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of canola oil. Okay, and I'm just going to give that a little mix just to break those eggs up. I'm using a fork. It kind of used almost as a mini little whisk. So that fork's just going to help to break those yolks up and mix everything together. Okay, so I have my dry ingredients. I have my wet ingredients. I'm going to switch over now to a spatula. The reason I'm doing this is because pancakes can get overmixed very quickly. So by using this spatula, it's just going to help to make sure it's not going to get too mixed. Where if we use this whisk, it's going to get overmixed very quickly. Another thing with pancakes, if you have a few little lumps left over in the flour, you can leave it. It really will help to make sure it's not getting overmixed. Where if you were making a cake or cookies, you would want to make sure all of that flour really gets incorporated. So I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a minute. Okay, so I have my dry ingredients, I have my wet ingredients, and I'm going to mix them together. Okay, so I'm just going to use that spatula to just make sure everything is mixed in. And once again, remember, if there's a few little flour clumps in there, it's totally fine. Okay, and I'm just kind of folding, so I'm just going underneath, and that way it's just making sure it's getting everything off the bottom. So once that's in there, I'm going to go ahead and drain out the water out of my oats. I'm going to add those in there. And I'm also going to add my blueberries. With blueberry pancakes, you have two options. You can add them into the batter, or you can add them on top of each pancake. I like to add them to the batter, that way they really mix in. And I'm going to add some extra blueberries because they are my favorite. And we are also going to add that little bit of milk right at the end also. Okay, and now we're just going to fold this together. Okay, so I have everything ready to go. My batter is ready. My grill pan is hot. If you are using this on the stove, you want to have it at a medium heat. And on this, I have this set to 300. All these are a little bit different. Some run a little low or a little high. So I usually do one tester. So I actually just did my tester pancake and it looked beautiful. So I know I'm ready to go. I'm going to put a little bit of butter, oil, or pan spray down. So I'm just actually taking just a little piece of butter and I'm using the tiniest little bit. So it is really just, it's not even coating it. It's just putting a little bit on there. You don't want much at all. So I'm going to just do, I'm using a little measuring spoon. And it just depends on what size of pancake you want. So like I was saying earlier, you could do teeny tiny pancakes or you could do very large pancakes. It is really up to you. Okay, so now that these are getting nice and bubbly around the outside, I'm just flipping them over. And as you can see, they are perfect golden brown. That one's gorgeous. I love when they have so many blueberries that are popping. Those are my favorite ones. Okay, so now these pancakes are almost done. I'm going to give them just another minute, just so I can get that perfect brown. I always love when they're really soft on the inside, but nice and crunchy on the outside. With these, you can top them however you want. I'm going to use a little bit of maple syrup. I always recommend using real maple syrup. You can find out for sure if it's real maple syrup by looking at the ingredient list. The only ingredient should be pure maple syrup. A lot of times, a lot of brands of maple syrup will say breakfast syrup or other words that kind of confuse you, like maple flavored syrup. And a lot of times that's just maple flavored sugar or corn syrup. So you always want to check to make sure when you're using syrup that it says pure maple syrup. And that means it is one ingredient and it's the best for you. Okay, so now that these are looking good and smelling good, I'm going to stack these on my plate. I do like to stack them nice and tall. It reminds me of that cartoon stack of pancakes. It's always like way too tall. So I'm going to stack them here. You could also top these with more fruit if you wanted. Oops, that one tried to run away. You could top them with blueberries. I like to do raspberries and strawberries. You could use honey on top if you'd like instead of syrup. Okay, so there is our beautiful stack of pancakes. You can see they're nice and steamy. I'm going to go eat some right now because they look and smell fantastic. Let's do, I feel like we need to do that syrup pour on the big stack first. Okay, let's see. I'm going to put it closer so you can see. Oh yeah, it's a beautiful stack of pancakes. Okay, I think it's time to take a bite. Okay. So good. It definitely showcases the blueberries. That was the goal. We really wanted the blueberries to be the star of the show. If you don't have blueberries, you could use other fruits. Sometimes I'll put chocolate chips in there. You could add nuts or spices. You could do cinnamon. So it's really, really up to you. I'm going to start making the banana pancakes next. I am making a smaller batch of these. As you can see, I still have lots of oatmeal blueberry pancakes. So I'm going to make a smaller batch, and I'm actually going to do this recipe in half for the banana pancakes. That way I won't have too many pancakes that me and my family can eat today. So I have in this bowl, I started out with 1 banana. My bananas are nice and ripe, which is what you want. You see a few little brown spots. That is totally fine. If these were underripe or still a little green, they might not mash as well. In this recipe, so we have our banana. I'm also going to use 2 eggs, a little bit of baking powder, a little bit of salt, vanilla extract, because remember that just adds a really great flavor in there. In this recipe, instead of sugar, we're going to use honey. If you don't have honey, you could add a pinch of sugar. You could actually add a little bit of maple syrup to this if you don't have honey as well. Okay, so I'm going to wash my hands and then we can jump in and get started. Okay, so similar as before, I have my grill pan nice and hot. It's at a medium heat. If you were using a pan, you would want to have that on your stove at medium heat also. So in this bowl, I have my banana, and I am going to add my 2 eggs. And I'm going to use a fork and just kind of mash that together. This is where, if you were using a banana that wasn't very ripe, this is where you would have some trouble and it'd be a lot harder to mash. Even this one isn't as ripe as I thought, and it's not as easy to mash. And you can see how this would be really fun with kids, because it's fun to get their little hands in here mashing the bananas. Okay, so as I'm mashing, I'm just mixing that egg in. And as I said earlier, there's no flour at all in this. Okay, I'll move my fork to the side for now. And then I'm going to add just a touch of baking powder. The recipe calls for 1/4 teaspoon, but since I'm doing half of that, I really want 1/8 of a teaspoon. So I really just need the tiniest little bit. Okay, and same with salt. I'm going to just add just a little pinch in there. Okay, and honey. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons. I want to do 1 tablespoon. I love honey. This is going to add a nice sweetness, but using a natural sugar. So we're not using any processed sugars in this. Okay, so now we have our honey, we have our salt, baking powder, eggs, and banana. I'm going to add our vanilla, and once again, it's just the teeny tiniest bit of vanilla. Okay, and now I'm going to move on to a spatula. I'm just going to mix everything together. And this recipe is really that simple. That is all it is. We're going to start cooking this here in a minute, but you could add a lot of different items to this. This is kind of just your starting place. You could add chocolate chips. I'm going to add some walnuts here in a few minutes. You could add your blueberries. You could actually add some of that oatmeal to here too if you'd like. I like to add cinnamon sometimes. It really is so amazing. Or holiday spices or baking spices can be really nice as well. So I have this ready to go. I have a bag of walnuts here. And I think I'm just going to add just a little handful in there. These walnuts are kind of big pieces, so I'm just going to break them up a little bit. You could also add pecans. If you wanted to add something crunchy, but if you don't eat nuts, you could add sunflower seeds. Okay, so now I'm just going to mix that together. I think bananas and walnuts are such a great combination. Okay, so my pan is nice and hot. This batter is very runny, as you can see. It's really loose. It just kind of moves around that bowl, and that is completely fine. It's going to be a little bit thinner pancake, and with that baking powder that we added, it's going to help to add a little puffiness to it as well. Okay, so I'm just using my scoop here. Okay, so our banana pancakes are ready. I'll put them on the plate. They're definitely a little bit softer since there is no flour, but they are still going to taste fantastic. Okay. So I just completed our banana pancakes with some walnuts in there. I'm going to add a little bit just to kind of spruce it up and make it a little bit more exciting on this plate. So I have a banana here, and I'm just going to do a few little slices. Put those over top. I'm also going to add some of our walnuts. You could also use granola, it would be really, really tasty. Okay, so then I'm going to add just a little bit of syrup. Okay, so there you go. Now you can see how beautiful and amazing that looks. Thank you everyone for joining me on our first week of Pancake Passport. Today we made 2 pancakes with our introduction to pancake lesson. Here we have our blueberry oatmeal, and we have our banana pancakes that we added walnuts and bananas and maple syrup on top. Next week we're going to talk about pancakes made from rice. So we're going to make some Vietnamese pancakes. So make sure you check it out. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and keep cooking.